Hello people! May's already over and I read 7 books this month. So here's my May wrap up for you. The first book I finished this month is Siren by Angie, which is the 5th book in the Septimus Heap series. This is the last book in the series that I had read before, and I have to say that I did understand it completely different now that I knew what had happened before in the series. This time I understood a lot more and I knew where the people actually came from and what the events in this book meant. The second book I finished in May is All I Know Now by Fletcher, and I only have the dust jacket because the book is currently with Carmen, who is reading it now. This was written by the lovely YouTuber Fletcher, and it's a non-fiction book about everything a teenager is concerned with: love and bullying and peer pressure and school and everything you go through at that age. Even though I'm 22, this still really resonated with me and I completely agree with what she's saying. So if you're a teenager going through this stage of your life, read this. The third book I read in May is Attachements by Rowell, and while I absolutely hate this cover, I absolutely adored the book. This book is set in 1999 and it's about Lincoln, who works in the IT office of a newspaper, and his job is to monitor the employees' emails. While he is at work, he comes across the messages that Beth and Jennifer, two best friends, send each other, and they are talking about personal things which they are not allowed to, but instead of telling them off, he keeps reading their email and he slowly falls in love with Beth, but by the time he realizes that it is too late to introduce himself. As I said before, I absolutely adore this book. The way it is written is amazing. We have chapters out of Lincoln's perspective, and then we have the email messages between Jennifer and Beth. And it's really nice that we get to know Jennifer and Beth the way Lincoln gets to know them, because this way we can understand his objective better. I loved reading about the turn of the millennium because that just gave it this extra kick. This was written in 2011, but it captures this end 90s, beginning of 2000s vibe with the beginning of the internet very well. And I liked reading about that because even though I was already alive at the time, I'm not sure I quite understood what was going on around me at the time. So I really like reading about it. The next book I read in May is also by Rowell, and it's Eleanor Park. This is the last Rowell book that I hadn't read yet, and while I adore this book a lot, I don't think I like it as much as I like Fangirl or Attachements or Landline, because it lacks this uplifting feeling. On the surface, this book is a young adult romance novel, but if you look deeper, it's also about bullying and child abuse. It's about fitting in and bad relationships. It's also about racism and prejudice. This book deals with so many important topics, and it does it in a way that you feel them and that you understand them. But it is also funny at times, and it still contains Rowell's witty dialogues. I love her writing, and this book is no exception for that. I think this book is amazing and it is absolutely important to read it, but I understand that for some people this might hit too close to home and it might be a difficult thing to read about. But overall, I enjoyed reading this. I flew through this and it made me laugh out loud, and it made me angry and aggressive and sad at the same time. I'm just amazed by how Rowell can make me feel all these feelings. The next book I read this month is Weiß, morgen mit uns ist by Ann Brashares, and the English title is The Here and Now. The book is about 17-year-old Prena who lives in New York with her mom. The special thing about her is that she's a time traveler. She comes from a future where the environment has been destroyed by natural disasters and humanity is facing extinction because of plagues. She and a few others selected travel back to the beginning of the 21st century, and everything is fine until she meets Ethan. Obviously, she isn't allowed to tell him where she came from, and the group she traveled with has a lot of restrictions, and she isn't actually allowed to be friends with him. So at first this book looks like a typical star-crossed lovers situation, but it is actually really dystopian and dark and has a lot of issues, and it's really scary at times, and there is a lot of action. The only thing that I have to say is that I think the German translation was rather bad, because the language in this one sounded very bleak and boring, and I think the English version probably did a better job at that. And the other complaint that I have is that I think the concept they use in this book is amazing, and I would have liked it if they had taken it further. I would have liked 2 books in the series because I felt like the ending was a bit rushed. However, if you like futuristic books with dystopian elements and cutesy romance, then this is your book. And the 6th book I finished this month is The Heir by Kiera. I have a lot to say about this book, so I already filmed a review of this book on the day that I finished it. It's currently in editing and it's going to be uploaded in a few days / a week as soon as I have finished it. So I'm not gonna say much about this book. I'm just gonna say that I loved it, but I had my issues with it. Everything else will be in the admittedly very long review. And the last and final book that I read in May is Das Geheimnis von Compton Lodge by Jackob. When I started reading it, I was a bit skeptical because unlike the first 10 pages, there was an error in a sentence where the sentence didn't make any sense at all. There were at least 2 words missing, but if you ignore that bad editing, I have to say that this book is very much like a Sir Arthur Conan Doyle book, and it really reads like a typical Sherlock Holmes story. So those were the books that I read this month. The first book that I'm currently reading is Darke by Angie, which is the 6th book in the Septimus Heap series. The second book that I started is Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, and this is a reread. I already read the first 3 books in the series in German. And the last book I'm reading is The Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, because after reading Das Geheimnis von Compton Lodge, I just had to go back into the original just to see if that book was as good as the original is, and I have to say, yeah, it's pretty close. As I said, my review of The Heir is going to come soon. I'm gonna link that here if it is up. Until then, leave a like on this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more. I will see you soon in my review of The Heir. Bye bye!